Well, hey everyone, welcome back to the Redeem Her Time podcast. I love when it's not just me, myself, and I with a microphone, but I actually get to bring on a guest that I know is going to help us have a conversation around something that affects every single one of us. And so today we are having this conversation about redeeming our time by hearing God clearly in business. How many of you want to hear God clearly, right? As business owners, we want to be faithful to the call he's put on our life. And yet, we live in a really busy and distracting and noisy world where sometimes it can be hard to hear clearly. And so, Heather O'Brien is with us today. Heather, I'm so excited to welcome you to the Redeem Her Time podcast. So, before we dive in, tell us just about you. What all are you juggling in this season of your life?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, I was just thinking right before we got on, I was like, and this is the most strangest prayer or thankfulness. It was a prayer, but I was like, God, thank you for all the things that you've given me to steward.
Hmm.
And I was trying to wrap my mind around it in a positive way. I was thinking about I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. And I'm like, oh. And I even had a vision in a moment of him showing me, yeah, I'm preparing you
Hmm.
to go from step to step to step so that you and even in the what we want to call business of life, it's all preparation for the next phase. So I'm homeschooling three kids. Two of them are a little teens, 18 and 15 next week. And they're doing well, one of them's in college and one of them is in the dual enrollment version of college. So I'm technically his homeschool teacher, but I don't have to teach him anything, praise God. And I got a little one also who's 8. So I am juggling a lot, but I also I help a lot in my local church teaching Sunday school classes and teaching Wednesday night kids classes, running small group and all those things. I just love the local church, but I'm also running my business and helping people heal with God and hear God clearly and things like that. So I'm juggling a lot, if you will. I'm also a a business coach on the side. I'm a contractor to be a business coach. So I just it's juggle, juggle, juggle. So
Yeah,
yeah.
right. We're all juggling, like you said, a lot of things, and we can either look at this like these are burdens or these are joys and things that God has given us.
Uh-huh.
And that just changes, a lot of things about how we approach them and what we do with them. So I love your perspective on that and just your intention around those things because most of us who are business owners, we're not just doing one thing, right? We have
Right.
lots of, different hats that we wear and roles that we play and things that we're passionate about. And so it's how do we steward it all well?
Mhm.
And hear God's voice to make sure that we're doing what He's calling us to, not just what we think we need to. So let's dive into that a little bit. Like, tell us about the work you do. Like, I know that you help women to heal
Mhm.
um, and with God and to hear God's voice. So take us a little bit on, tell us a little bit more about what that means, and then take us on the journey of how God did bring you to that place of doing the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, I'm really just doing what helps get me free. And so as I got free from anxiety, panic attacks, the overwhelming depression even, my journey to getting free, it actually started by hearing God's voice. And it was just a friend saying, well, we were just in a random conversation. We were talking about God and I go to church every Sunday. I love God. I've been saved since I was 7. And she was saying, well, all we got to do is just hear God's voice. And I was like, wait, what? You can hear God? And I was 30 when this conversation was happening. I'm a grown woman in love with God, but am I really? That's where I'm at now. I'm like, I know I was saved, but I guess that was it because I wasn't in a relationship with God because now I realize a relationship means you can hear him. And I had no idea this was even possible. And so now I started hearing God's voice. I started hearing him say, I love you.
Mm.
That sounds so trivial, but it just started healing every area of my life because, panic attacks and fear and anxiety and worry and things like that, it's rooted in fear. And the antidote to fear is God's love. And I see that now, God saying, I love you. And I'm boo-hooing it over these 3 words. I was experiencing his love and I was getting delivered as he was just whispering to me, I love you. And I could just embrace him and feel him and in a way that I never had experienced in my life. So all of that to say, my healing story, I couldn't end with just me. I have a teacher's heart and I love to replicate. I love to help others. I'm like, where's the formula? Where's the method? I want to find what the method was that got me free. And ultimately, it's hearing God's voice.
Mm.
But also, I started helping other people. People would come to me and, well, can you disciple me on your weekends? I don't know if you know, I didn't even say this, but I was an accountant. So
Oh, wow. That's like a whole change.
yeah, that's a whole nother ballgame. I was an accountant. So I went to school to be an accountant, and I was doing that before I had kids, and then when I had kids, I was still doing it until I till my healing journey started. And then my healing journey started. I started discipling people in my lunch hour. They were like, I was walking people through inner healing and deliverance, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was just like, yeah, I've got an hour, in between juggling. I still had kids. I still had brand new babies, and then it was like I felt God telling me to start homeschooling. I started doing that. And then so I was at home more and I had to steward my home. That's a whole nother story. But, we start doing what we needed to do, what we become passionate about the things that we get free of. We become passionate about the things that we learn. And we're like, oh, this is kind of fun now. And now I'm in the business game. I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. Do I still want to do the healing? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I want to do both. Can I do both? And God's like, yeah, you can.
I
And
love
yeah, I'm going in a million different directions, but
Yeah, no, it's so, like this is so often how it is, right? Like we start on one path, but I'm sure that accounting stuff was not lost
no.
in the whole journey. It was preparation, whether it was, some of those skills or like you said, the people that you were able to interact with that now you started really teaching what, was making a difference for you. And isn't that so often? This is what I find as I interview women for this podcast. So often we are serving that person who we were just a few years ago, right?
Exactly.
And because we want to say, hey, this is what's making a difference, and let me show you the way. And so I love your teacher's heart. I'm a former teacher as well. And so it's like, you can't not when something's working and making a difference and things like that. So let's dive into this a little bit more. How is it that you think that, in your situation, you got to, 30 years old and really weren't hearing God's voice? And this is not, pointing the finger at you or anyone who's listening, but like, how is it that we can be a believer from an early age? Because I was too. I mean, I grew up in a strong home. And so I wanted to call Jesus on the telephone at the ripe age of 3, not knowing what it meant, right? But
Oh,
and yet, we can still like not really be in a relationship with him. So let's just talk about that first before we actually talk about how this affects us in business.
oh, that's a really good conversation. And it's like, okay, first of all, we have to take off any shame, any condemnation, and any pointing of fingers, even.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I didn't know. My parents didn't know what they didn't know. My church didn't know what they didn't know. And so I look back and really I can look at myself and I see I was actually in a fog.
Mm,
I was a Christian, but I also enjoyed my occasional sins.
mm.
Eh, I don't know. I don't know a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
But I still partied. I still did things I shouldn't do as a Christian. And I still went to church every Sunday. Every time the doors were open, I was there. But I wasn't feeling the conviction. And I remember even walking in church sometimes feeling like I was really in a haze. I was not it, it was I don't know, it's like an out of body experience. Maybe some of y'all can resonate with that. And then it turned into, okay, I haven't dealt with my traumas. I got a lot of heartache. I got a lot of um, anxiety and depression. I didn't know what to do with. So much so my body was responding. I was 100 pounds overweight. I was taking depression medicines for 7 years until I came to myself one day and said, Heather, why didn't you get down to why you need these depression medicines? Why did you just start taking them? I never even questioned it. My doctor said you need that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it seems right. And so not questioning it, not, I just I was just going through the motions of life. I
Mm,
wasn't really seeking more. I wasn't seeking better until I was. And it was around 30 when I was like coming to myself, I'm like, I should figure this out. I should
mm,
lose weight. I'm way overweight. I mean, when I had my first kid, I was 230 pounds. I was way overweight. And you look at that picture now and you're like, that was you. And I'm like, it was.
mm,
And that started my journey of like, okay, I want to do better for my health. If that's what it started with. It started, I want to lose weight. But losing that weight really made me lean on God. It made me point to, I need to hear God's voice for this. Because how do I lose weight? I didn't know how to count calories. I didn't know how to read a nutrition label. I didn't know what my body needed. I didn't know I was like ignorant, not just in my relationship with God, but I was ignorant in so many things in life, just total ignorance. And like I said, I can't point fingers. I didn't
Mm.
seek it out.
Sure. Yeah.
I
But I
didn't
love
know
what you
how to
did
cook
is
when I got married.
you got curious. You know,
Yes.
so often when we are just oblivious and we just keep going and we feel the feel, right? Or we have that tug in our heart, or we have that, for me, it was the knot in my stomach that was the ball in my throat as part of my story. Like we can ignore it and then just stay in that like fog, and just keep going. Or we can pause and get curious and really, like you said, start diving down to what is really the root issue here, so
Yeah.
that we can actually see transformation. And, you and I both teach. It's not the surface thing that is often what gets our attention. It really is a heart issue,
Yeah.
that we have a really distracted heart that is, running after a lot of lesser things, and God is calling us back to Himself. And so, yeah, I love that He's patient with us, and it's never too late, and we're never too far gone,
Right.
to be in that place. So what a beautiful story of that. So let's talk about this. So, like you work with women, in business. That's who my audience is here. And so we're kind of really shaping this conversation in that way. There are so many women listening right now who love Jesus, who
Mhm.
are serving them faithfully in their life and in their business and in their church, right? And in their families. But they still feel like they're spinning their wheels even after trying all the planners and the productivity hacks and all the time management,
Yeah.
expert gurus out there and whatever. Like, why is that? And what's really behind that? Like, if we could really start getting curious about that, what are you seeing?
You know, in surface level, it's just fear of something. And
Mm,
I like to go a little bit deeper and I'm like, well, what am I afraid of right here? Why why do I have to be at every meeting? Why do I have to insert myself and be the volunteer for everything? I don't know about you, but that's like I raise my hand way too much. And I, s- I have to ask why. Why am I doing that? Why am I juggling so much? Am I supposed to be juggling this? And why aren't these calendars and everything working? Probably because I'm doing more than I should be doing. Well, number one, and I have to get down to the why. Why am I really doing? What am I afraid of? What? Why can't someone else help with this? Why can't someone else volunteer? Why can't you just sit at home and just rest for a minute? Why can't you sit still? Why can't? And so I like to get down to the bottom of let's name the fear because it's so easy to call it fear. But
sure.
I think that if you don't name what you're afraid of, you really can't get free of it.
Can you give us
It's
an
fear.
example? Like, give us
Yeah.
an example of what naming fear would look like. I love to get really
Uh-huh.
tangible here.
Yeah. So this might sound a little bit strange, but the word coming to me right now is perfectionism.
Mm,
It's rooted in fear.
yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. So perfectionism, OCD, having things in order. We were talking about the planners and things. I used to be the queen of that, and now I'm like, take that label off of me. I don't want that label. I want to have the spirit of excellence, and it's completely different, even though they're really similar. So perfectionism is rooted in fear because I have to have these things in order, or else
Mm,
something's going to happen.
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
fear of something, fear of it's not going to work out. I'm going to be late. I won't be on time. I People won't like me.
Mm,
People will judge me. A perfectionist is gonna like I'm just like this is good enough. That's where I am now. I wasn't
yeah.
always though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before it would be fine if I was good enough for some things, but for other things, I'm like, nope, has to be perfect, has to be really, I think on time was my biggest hang up. That was part of perfectionism and OCD and the control, it's fear of not being in control. Okay,
Mm,
so perfectionism is one layer, one branch, if you will, and you go deeper, and there's anxiety, worry, late, but it's really I'm not in control. And there's and you can call that fear, right?
sure.
I'm afraid because if I'm not in control, who is? What is?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. There's a lot of layers of this if you really
uh-huh,
take the time to go into it all. Yeah.
uh-huh,
And
uh-huh.
here's the thing, we have this voice in our head, right, who's saying these things. But then I think we also have all these other voices in the world around us, right,
Yeah,
that are
yeah,
speaking things that are not true.
yeah.
So what is the world telling us to do? Like what are the voices that we're hearing? Even though we say we want to be hearing God's voice, we're listening to a lot of other voices. So what was it saying and how is that affecting us?
Sometimes I call this spiritual pets. It's
Hmm.
not just the world. Okay, so we're Christians here, and we have to realize that there is a world going on that's way more real than what we can see. The
Sure.
things unseen are really real.
Yeah.
And so there's what I call spiritual pets influencing us and whispering to us. For instance, if we go back to the control and the orderly thing and being on time and business, I remember thinking we would be like 2 minutes late for bedtime. And I'd kind of be having a freak out moment.
Mm-hmm.
Anger would arise, frustration, irritation, whatever word you want to use. And I remember my husband saying, it's like 2 minutes later than we, plan. It's a random bedtime that we picked out of the sky, and we're 2 minutes late and it's frustrating you. And that's when the Holy Spirit started speaking to me. Oh yeah, this is unreasonable. And so why is it so easy to believe that this is worthy of your frustration? And he showed me this spiritual pet talking to me. And it for that one, it was the spirit of control. I wasn't in control of things. I was 2 minutes late. I,
Mm.
I didn't have control of time. I didn't have control of what was going on around me. And so these spiritual pets, they're not nice, but they do give you thoughts. And sometimes they sound so reasonable. They
Mm.
sound so good. And that's the thing is, like I said, perfectionism is not actually godly. It's actually rooted in fear. And
Yeah.
so a spiritual pet is whispering to you that if I could pull out some scriptures here, it says
Yes.
God's not given us a spirit of fear. In
Mm.
other words, a spiritual pet of fear.
Mm.
Okay. And but he's given you a power and love and a sound mind. And so if you it's not very loving to get so frustrated that you're 2 minutes late. And now I can say very boldly, anytime I'm quote unquote late, I say, the footsteps of the godly are ordered of the Lord. I'm right where I'm meant to be. I am on time. This is where I'm supposed to be, right when I'm supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And so I have to remind myself, I've said that so many times now. It feels so bold. It feels so courageous to say that and mean it. And I'm not late.
Yeah.
I'm even if I'm quote unquote late, it's God was keeping me safe from something. That's where my mind goes now. God was orchestrating the events of that's going on. And so we have to go back to these voices. Okay, it sounds godly, but it's not good. That's another scripture.
Mm.
It feels godly, but it's not good. And so we have to know the difference between the spirit of excellence and perfectionism.
Yeah.
So excellence says it's good enough. You did your best. Heather, you're allowed to rest. I want you to rest. You did good enough. But performance and perfectionism says keep on trucking, keep on working, keep on grinding. You don't sit down, don't sit still, don't take a deep breath. You don't deserve that.
Mm.
And so there's that difference of that condemnation kind of going on there.
Mhm. Yeah, and we listen to that voice. And I can just hear like, see like the hand,
Mhm.
speaking to us and then what happens, right? We just kind of keep shrinking down and back and
Yeah,
feeling bad and feeling the shame and the guilt and the weight. And that was something that really is a part of my story. I was always chasing my not enoughness. My time wasn't enough. My doing wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. And it does become, a weight. And then we're not really living out what God has called us to. And this whole idea of like not being late, we often talk, I hear women say all the time, I'm behind. I'm behind. I'm like, you're not behind. You're right where you are.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
like how are you choosing to move forward? And
Yeah.
yeah, the enemy would love to keep us in that place where we're feeling the condemnation. So
Uh,
let's you've made a transformation. So help us make the
uh,
transformation here
yeah.
as we're talking about this, because this isn't where we want to stay. Right.
Right,
How do we
right.
start clearing out the noise of the voices that we hear in our head, whether they're spiritual pets or they're the voices of people around us, so that we can hear God's voice,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to what we're doing in our business? Because let's be honest,
Yep,
there's a skill set to business, but there
yep,
is just as much and probably more importantly, a mindset and a
yeah,
spiritual mindset
yep,
that we need to, we can have the best strategies, we can
yeah,
have all the marketing tools, we can have the podcast, we can have the whatever, but if we're, believing these lies, it's not gonna go anywhere.
right.
So how do we start clearing the noise so we can
Uh-huh.
hear God's voice and can really grow this thing God has called us to?
Yeah. So the thing is, you want to hear God's voice and you're like, but how do I do that? And I just want to simplify it for you. It's it's the word plus the spirit equals truth. It's
Mm.
not one or the other. So if you're just having these prayer times and it's lovely, okay, but you also need to pair it with hearing the word. It's the word plus the spirit equals truth, and you can't just have one because the word's going to lead you down the law road and religious and probably back to control and perfectionism and performance, but the spirit's going to guide you to love and the fear of the Lord, and you marry them together. And when you marry them together, you're going to hear the voice of God when you have business meetings with God, for instance, and then okay, I just gave you one example. The footsteps of the godly are ordered of the Lord. I'm right where I meant to be. And see, so I took a scripture and then I added the spirit into it. I am right where I'm meant to be.
Mm,
I interposed the right now moment, the spirit-led moment of the yes. I'm reminding my soul and I say it out loud. Okay, that's a huge key. Say it out loud. So we want to add in the declarations from the word of God. That's how you're hearing it when you say it. You're hearing it when you read it, but your body, your soul is actually hearing it when you say it out loud. I love to do a declaration out loud. Now, I'm not talking about affirmation. The world loves some good affirmations. You're beautiful. You're right on time. No, no. The word of God is sharp.
yeah.
It's the thing that we need. So we want the word plus the spirit. And that's how you hear God's voice. So I want to go back to that. You hear God's voice by reading the word and hearing the spirit. And so if you could just boil it down really quickly, if you're in the word daily, that's all I'm talking about. Not I'm not talking about being religious, but then you're in your prayer closet. And I remember even for business, this happened this year. I was asking God, well, what's the things I should be focusing on? Right? Because you don't want to do too much. Man, I can do a project like anybody's business. I love a good project because it feels like I'm doing something. Here comes performance. And so I felt the Lord tell me two things to focus on in my business. And they're broad categories, but two things. And so everything that I do now in this season has to lead back to those two things,
Mm,
or I'm off task. I'm like, oh, okay. And I remember even recently, well, a couple of weeks ago, I had a dream at night and I heard God's voice. And in the dream, okay, you and I both know Steph Gass. This is just an extra, but she was in my dream. I woke up and I'm like, oh yeah, I need to do what she's already been telling me to do. But I knew it was a God dream. But I stopped and I prayed. Okay. So I'm like, God, you, like I feel like you just gave me redirect. You gave me some really important information to do right here, but I like a good project too, which will get me off task. Is this really what I need to be doing? And so that's how you're hearing God's voice as I'm asking, I'm stopping, I'm pausing, I'm giving him time. I'm like, God, I'm finna get up in the middle of the night and I'm finna go do that thing that you said. Like, I feel like you said it. And then he started flooding my soul with confirmation. I had vision, I had direction, I had to know how. I'm like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I could see it play out, and it still lined up with the two things that he had told me to do
mm.
this year. And so I went after that fun project, and it was a fun adrenaline rush. And now I'm like, okay, stay on task, the two things. And so we want to hear God's voice. We want to know, what did he say? What has he said? What did he say? What are we doing those things that he said to do? That's how we really stay on task, by hearing his voice.
Yeah. And it's so simple. I mean, it almost like we overcomplicate it. And as I'm listening, I'm like, really?
Uh-huh.
It's just like if you and I were sitting down and having a cup of coffee, Heather, and I wanted to hear your voice,
Uh-huh.
would put my phone away. I would, like maybe close the door. I would turn off, the TV or whatever, and I would like listen and lean in
Mhm.
and ask questions,
Uh-huh.
right? And then just be quiet. And so often I think we think that hearing God's voice is, some, thing that we're trying to, unveil or
Uh-huh.
find. And it really is as simple as just getting quiet and asking and
Yeah.
then listening.
And I feel like I need to add this in for just a second because so I had this great idea, but I'm really good with having great ideas.
Sure,
Okay. And maybe a lot of our listeners are too. Like,
sure.
I think the business entrepreneurs world, we're very creative. And man, we could get our wheels going with 20 different projects and it's fun, but we really just need to finish one project.
Sure. Yeah.
And the finishing is almost as hard as um, anything. Like, we'd rather start something new than finish. Some that maybe that's not everyone, but I think that's a good handful of us. And so I want to bring it back to I stopped. I had an idea and I stopped. I'm like, God, you just gave me this dream. I'm feeling really inspired. But I got there because I've gone through some inner healing to know I like to start new things,
Mm,
right? I've gone through this inner
sure.
healing process of knowing I'm really good at not staying focused.
Yeah.
I'm really good at getting creative and going crazy. But with this creativity, and it seems good, but it's still not godly if I'm not obeying his voice.
Sure.
And so I stopped and I paused. And I think that's really important just to
Mm.
reframe this. That's part of hearing his voice too, is pausing. Pause. Listen, did did he really say, or is the enemy trying to get you off track and get you excited about something? It could be a great idea. Is it for this season?
Mm.
God, do you really want me to do this now?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
because I was like, it was midnight, and I was like, God, I'm fixing to get up. Like I can't even go back to sleep. I'm so excited about this. And I forced myself to sit still and keep listening to God. And he started downloading more and more and more. And I was like, okay, I can't sit on this. I have to do this. And I was done with it in a week. It was a weekly project. But anyways, I say all that to say there's some inner healing that needs to come into this hearing God's voice part of it too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Right. And, and I love the idea of what's a good idea versus a God idea.
Hmm.
And yet, I think on the other side, flip side too, that we can often sometimes question an idea that comes that feels in alignment, but then we start questioning, well, is that God's voice or mine? I
Uh-huh.
think so often, we can kind of sit on that side of it where we're not jumping in, but now we're holding back because we want to know that we know that we know that that's what it is. And, I think that
Uh-huh.
yeah, we have to find the balance between, the two of just jumping in, but also not holding back out of fear of
Yeah.
and it's probably more so, something in us.
Uh-huh.
What God was the person who put that very idea in your head, and that is exactly what you're supposed to do because it's in alignment. This is why we have to have like that longer term vision.
Uh-huh.
We know if things
And
are moving us in that direction.
and I would add this, hearing God's voice also comes through other humans.
Mm,
Okay, so community is really important. So I always say to hear God's voice, you're going to have Bible, worship, prayer, and community. And
mm,
community is like the last thing we like to add in because people have hurt our feelings. They've given us bad advice. They've, church hurt, whatever.
mm,
But community with fellow believers who already know you. And I would say I could hear my friend. I have a business friend. We meet weekly, and we were talking, and she was like, Heather, I can tell you like a good project. She's the first person that pointed that out, said it out loud, and I'm like, I do. How do you know me so well? And that
right.
is also the voice I heard when I woke up from that dream. Okay. And I'm like, and that's what I said. I said back to God, God, I like a good project. But that wouldn't have come about without community already kind of redirect.
Mm,
Heather, I think that this is you're going out of your lane. You're supposed to stay on these two things. Remember, does this fit into those two things? And that thing didn't, which is why I really focused in. God, this it kind of goes back to my two things, but does it? And am I going off task here? And so without community and hearing God's voice through my friendships, I might not have been able to so healthily have that conversation with God.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. We need people that we can speak out loud. This is what I hear God saying, who can then speak it back to us and
Uh-huh.
say, like, remember when you said that? And
Uh-huh.
yeah, can help give us that direction. And that's why I agree. Community is so key. Once we've listened to the word, right, in the spirit,
Yeah.
prayer, and things like that, we have to have other like-minded people around us, which is why
Mhm.
what we do around here, right, is that we make
Yeah.
connections, in our community. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But what? Yeah, this is something, and this is why I've created my CEO Focus program because we are so busy and distracted by a billion projects at once that are half baked on the back burner, kind of, in, the beginning stages of things and not really crossing any finish lines. And then you're not really seeing the impact. And I say done is where completion meets momentum, right? Like
Mhm.
sometimes just having a great idea or even getting started on it, even if it is a God idea, especially when it's a God idea, isn't going to make the impact that it could and should make if and until we actually get it to that point where it's out into the world and doing what it's supposed to do. So I love this reminder. What a great thing. And I can see, I mean, just through your story, the difference that this has made. So let's just kind of talk about the benefits for us. Like how does doing this, getting curious about what's behind it, really leaning into, get quiet and listen to the Lord, how does this help us to better steward our time in a way that aligns us with kingdom purpose, not just being productive? I mean, it feels good. Give me a good checklist. I was the girl who would write things on my checklist I already did just for the satisfaction of checking it off.
Uh-huh.
That's not what we're called to, is just to be productive for productivity's sake. I call it
Right.
passivity, is actually a term I've coined, that we're being productive with purpose behind it to
Well,
see something else. So how do you see all of this coming together and giving us a good return on time invested?
that's good. That's good. Okay, so I'm thinking about my two things that God had asked me to do, and maybe I'll just share it
I was gonna
just
say, do you
for
mind sharing?
clarity. Yeah. So one thing he said to do was now I have a podcast, and that's the top funnel of my business. Okay. I'm talking to business people, so maybe I can use all these words. Yay.
Yes.
And so my podcast is where it's the front facing, it's where you get to know me, and you're just getting to know me. Well, I want to get in front of other audiences. And so he said the one thing I need to focus on most was getting in front of other audiences, just like I'm doing right now today.
Yeah.
And so in order to do that, I have to pitch.
Mm.
So I have to pitch other shows. And that takes time. It takes effort, it takes intentionality, it takes a lot of research. It's not hard, and I love doing it, but it literally takes a couple hours a week for me to get like five good pitches that feel really aligned. And because I do it with excellence. Okay, I am a little extra. I
I will say, you guys who are listening, I got an email from Heather. I did not know Heather. Heather reached out to me, but it was very apparent that it was not a copy and paste template. I know so many of us love to give me a template, just tell me what to say. It was heartfelt. I could tell that Heather had listened to the podcast. I could tell that she made a connection with a guest that I had had who she also had collaborated with. She even pointed out some of the ways that there was alignment between our messages very specifically. And it's so interesting because I get pitches, I mean, every day of the week. And
Right,
let's be honest, some of them I'm like, I can tell. And I'll even sometimes say in a response, like, I don't think you really listen to my podcast because this is nothing like what we talk about and who's talking. So, anyway,
right. Yeah,
yes, you
yeah,
did put in the time and
yeah,
it shows.
yeah. And so when we think about hearing God's voice, sometimes it sounds fun, but what I'm telling you is he told me to do something that's not necessarily fun, but important for my business. And so there's obedience that comes. So when we hear God's voice, we also have to obey.
Mm.
So that means every week, now I told you I have a business bestie and we meet every week, and she's like, did you do your five? And so I have this goal and I just randomly came up with it. She's like, one's not enough, two's bare minimum. And so I was like, I want to do more pitches a week. I know I'm supposed to. God said, blah, blah, blah. But also it's so much time. And between me and her, I was like, okay, I am going to surrender my time and I am going to do at least five minimum. And so I haven't not done my minimum since I confessed her. So accountability partner is really, this community thing is so important. It's vital. And I don't know that I would have done that apart from her asking me every Monday, did you do your five?
We
And so
need
it's
it.
we
Yeah.
need it. And so that was the one thing is so my top of my funnel is my podcast. I need a pitch to be on other shows so that people would start listening to my podcast and I would grow my audience. That was one thing. And so that means I had to set aside the time to do that. And then the other, and I also have to set aside time for the interview, right? So there's multiple pieces that go into that. It okay, you need to pitch other shows, so that takes time, but also you have to like do the interviews and then you have to do all the things to promote the interviews. And the second thing that he asked me to do was to really focus on this monthly workshop that I want to do. And so it's a way, it's another funnel, if you will. It's like the second level of my funnel is get people face to face with me so that I can get to know them better, so that I can tell them about my product, so I can teach them how I really coach. So I coach live every month. It's so easy for me. It's 1 hour of my day in a whole month. Okay. And it's actually fun. I love it. It's very stimulating, but also I get live coaching recorded for my podcast. I get a ton of benefit from it. And then I pitch my program. And all of that to say, I also have to okay, so I have to focus on the workshop, but that means I'm pitching it. So even right now, like I have to force myself to say, "Hey, come to my live workshop," which also means I am dedicating to having a live workshop every month, which was
It
a
makes you show up,
huge
right?
it
Yeah.
was a huge stretch, but now that I've said it on so many shows, I won't not show up. I'm excited about it. And that's going to be my pitch. That's my freebie, if you will. It gets people on my email list. So you see my funnel going through that.
Mhm.
And so that's my two things I have to focus on, but also I had to update my website, my my page for it. I had to update everything for it. My pitch is now this. And so, anyways, that's my two things. And so I'm hearing God's voice through it, but I have to steward it,
Mm,
right? I have to steward what He's given me. I have to actually do the work. I have to show up. And there's multiple benefits from hearing God's voice.
yeah,
He told me to stay in my lane, and it's helping me focus.
yeah.
It's helping me with my checklist. Does this fall into those two things? Does this really help me get in front of another audience? Does this help other people join my workshop? Does that make sense? Like, so
Totally.
there's so many benefits to hearing God's voice through community, through prayer, through worship, through time with Him, but
Mhm.
also, are we going to steward it? And the only way you can really say you have benefits from hearing God's voice is if you're actually obeying His voice.
Yeah, I was gonna say we can't just hear it and then be like, okay, thanks,
Uh,
and I'm not gonna do anything
yeah.
about it. We actually have to
Right.
walk it
And
out.
so it has to be part of your checklist at that point. And you have to be willing to surrender the other things that don't fit into that checklist anymore.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I love this. I love this. So, what would you say as we wind up today? What would be one piece of encouragement you would say to someone listening who's like, maybe they've been in that fog? Maybe they do feel like they've been hearing all the voices in their head or around them. They've been going in lots of directions because there's just not clarity and it just feels like, I don't know. What would you say to her so that she can start clearing that fog and hearing God's voice and start moving towards what he's telling her?
Yeah, I would go back to okay, the way that I got my two things for this year was in a business meeting with God.
Yeah.
And so I asked him a question point blank, and then I listened.
Go figure.
I actually like was not multitasking while I was praying. So a business meeting with God means you're just sitting still and you're going to ask a question and then you're going to expect him to listen to have heard you and then have a response. And it can look a lot of different ways. For some people, it's journaling. For some people, it's for me, I close my eyes and I usually have a vision. I expect God and I ask God. So I do want to give you some practical tips. Ask him something really easy and then im expect. So you ask and you expect, and then how do you expect him to respond?
Mm,
How do you expect him to respond? So you get expectant, but what is your how? And I say, this is in my prayer. I'll ask him a really easy question. So for instance, God, what is the one thing I should be focusing on in my business in, you could say in this season, you could say in this month, you could say in this week. Get it down to wherever you are in this moment right now. And then it could be even what should I focus about my upcoming sale or um, a lot of us are thinking about like the fall sales or the different thing. I don't know when this episode's going to come up, but there's always like a flash sale or something going on in your business and you want to ask God, what's the one thing I should really be focusing on? So in this season I'm planting seeds and he keeps telling me you're not in the harvest season, Heather. I'm
mm,
like, ugh. Okay, I'm like, when's the harvest coming? He's like, no, you're planting seeds. And so you have to know what season you're in. God, what season am I in? That could be a great question. Am I in the harvest season? Am I in the planting season? Am I in the plowing season? Last year I was in the plowing season. I was digging up. I was relaying the foundation and getting it back to order or in order. I don't know that I ever had it in order before a year ago. And so I was going through, you have to know what season you're in. So ask God, what season am I in? Then expect him to answer. But then a plan. Okay, so here's how I like to pray this. I say, God, will you speak to my heart? Okay, I don't know if you know this, but in the scriptures, a lot of times when it says the word heart, it also means imagination.
mm,
And so I close my eyes and I expect to start imagining with God. And he usually gives me a vision I would never come up with in a million years in my own. And it makes so much sense. It confirms. I ask him for a scripture sometimes to go with it. I like the word plus the spirit equals truth. And so you can ask God some really easy questions and start just doing that one thing.
mm.
Just ask him one question. Don't get overwhelmed with asking him 10 questions. That's too much. I've done that before and it was like, this didn't go anywhere. Just ask him the one thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I love this because this is what my CEO focus is all about. We ask, Lord, what is the one thing that you're
Mm.
asking me to give intentional focus to over the next 12 weeks that's really going to move the needle and produce some kingdom results. And yeah, he is faithful. to answer those things, because if it's what he's called us to, then then he will give us that wisdom and insight that we need. So I love this, and thank you for that reminder of just how simple it can be, but it does, it requires us just taking that time. So I love this. We could talk all day. I know
Yeah.
we've just scratched the surface. So what resources do you have to support women? Like, I would love to put some links in the show notes. What would be a good next step if somebody wants to connect with you or learn more about what you have to offer, Heather?
Yeah, I'm so honored to be here and talking to your audience today. It's so refreshing to talk to other business owners, entrepreneurs, and like-minded business, kingdom business folks. And so, if you want to jump over, maybe you're thinking you need healing with God and any capacity, anxiety, depression, panic attacks, anything like that. That's what I help people with. I help Christians specifically with, and I do it every third Monday of the month. I have a live what I call a prophetic healing workshop. And you can go to heatherobrien.net/workshop and sign up. That's heatherobrien.net/workshop. And I'll meet you there every third Monday of the month on a Zoom call where we'll get down to the roots of the issues of what's causing the fear, the panic, the worries, the struggle bus. Maybe it's the perfectionism that we talked about today. I would love to see you there.
Yeah, and I would encourage you guys go listen to her Heal with God podcast, because she puts those on the podcast. So if you want to
Yeah.
hear what is that like, maybe you're a little unsure, what does that look like? Just go. She's just asking questions and helping you to like get down to the root of what's really going on and what God has to say. And it's a beautiful thing to like listen to. So I encourage you to, yes, go attend a live one or go listen to one, and then make sure that you connect with her. So we will make sure to put those links in the show notes. And we're also going to continue the conversation over inside the Redeem Her Time community, because it can be really easy to hear things that, move us, and yet we're just moving on to the next thing. And so I love to have a place where you guys can connect with our guests. You can ask questions. You can learn more from them. You can, interact and get to know them on a personal level. So I'm inviting everyone over into the Redeem Her Time community. If you're not a member yet, you can find us at redeemhertime.com/community. Come share. What nugget did you need to hear today? What was it that really stood out to you? Or maybe, that question when you're asking the Lord, what am I to focus on in this season? What answer is coming up for you? And let's walk with each other as we ask those questions and listen, and then walk forward in obedience. That's like we talked about. So yes, you come hang out with us over there. So thanks so much, Heather, for hanging out with us on the podcast today. This has been really fun. And I can't wait to bless your audience as well. But before we go, I always love to end, with this question. It ties right into what you were just talking about. Like, what is it time for in this season of your life or business as we are finishing up another year?